After the emotional and intense ending of episode 6 of WandaVision, it slows the pace down for episode 7, save for one incredible final scene that lays the groundwork for the final 2 episodes to be really something spectacular. With Vision largely sidelined in this episode due to him finding out about his past life, as the Office-inspired title sequence suggests, this episode's mostly about Wanda. So let's deal with Vision, as he's got the least going on this episode. He wakes up after nearly dying for a third time back inside the Hex because he was reabsorbed at the end of episode 6. He meets Darcy, who was absorbed along with the rest of the Sword base and turned into some sort of circus. Wasting no time, he awakens Darcy the same way that he awakened Abalash and Agnes in previous episodes. They proceed to steal a food truck and try and make their way back to the Vision residence, with Darcy filling Vision in on the life he doesn't remember living. However, they run into a bunch of literal roadblocks along the way. Now, in my previous video, I actually said that I thought Vision was going to be written out of the sitcom in some sort of way in this episode to give him time to heal from being nearly torn apart outside the Hex. I wasn't far off. He was written out of the show, sort of. He wasn't having to heal or anything, but I was kind of right in that Vision was removed largely from this episode. It does slow the pace of the whole show down, as it's mostly just backfilling for him. I guess if you've never seen any of the other MCU stuff, that would also be nice filling in for you, but it does, for everyone who's watching that understands, it does kind of pull you out of the show a wee bit, because you're like, yeah, we know all this. Now here's something cool. We knew all along that Darcy was going to end up inside the Hex. When her character poster was first released, in one of the TVs in there, it actually showed a little bit of this costume. It was right there all along, right in our faces, and we totally missed it. One of the things I was most excited to see in this episode was the big reveal of Monica's aerospace engineer, and it just kind of came and went. There was no big reveal, and the person that Monica spoke to just didn't really seem any different from any of the other Sword agents that were around. So, this probably means one of two things. One, we didn't see the aerospace engineer. They designed the Hex buggy, but they weren't there at that micro Sword base that had been set up. Or two, they're going to appear or be name dropped later. Marvel knows what we're like, right? It's entirely possible that the internet just took this single line of dialogue and ran with it, and now we're all getting laughed at for being just overexcited about the smallest thing. There was never any indication, like there was no hints that there was a cameo going to be, from John Krasinski as, Reed Richards or anything like that. So there was never really any weight to it. The internet could very well have just ran with it, because that's what we're like and that's what we do. One of the two huge standout moments in this episode is the birth of Spectrum, with Monica's powers awakening as she fights to re-enter the Hex, this time under her own power. This scene was seriously so cool. It was probably one of my favourite scenes of the show so far. That shot where all of Monica's forms that she's taken through the Hex so far, all sort of lining up and then combining into her. Oh man, that was so freaking cool. It looked like it could have just been lifted straight from a comic. That and her view of the reality with all that electromagnetic energy. It was just so cool. And it was also a nice touch that we got to hear more of that voiceover that we heard as she was reawakening from the blip. This is also really interesting though, because this changes the rest of the show, because there's going to be an inevitable big bust up at some point in this show. Where does Monica lie? Where are her allegiances here? Because she doesn't want to kill Wanda. She doesn't want to hurt her, but even though Wanda's trying to kill her time and time again, she definitely got more of a beef with Hayward, so it's entirely possible that it'll be everyone in the Hex versus everyone outside of the Hex. But the point is, I think she's going to be a big part of the final 2 episodes of the show. They've just introduced an Avengers level hero in this show. They're going to keep her around and use her. She's also going to be in Captain Marvel too, and I think she's going to be Spectrum, not Photon. I think Photon is going to be kept for Maria Rambeau, and she'll go by the name Spectrum, purely based on just the way her perspective looked with that electromagnetic energy and stuff. And her sword uniform also makes a pretty cool starter uniform for Spectrum as well. I've largely stayed away from the mid-show ads that are in WandaVision because I just thought that they were pointing to significant chapters in her life, but this one, this week, is too big to ignore. It could potentially end up having a huge impact on the future of the MCU. It's for Nexus, an antidepressant medication, which is particularly relevant given that Wanda herself is going through a bit of a depression in this episode, wanting to be left alone after
intentionally expanding the borders of the false world we created.
Anyway, Nexus. This could be important. In Marvel Comics, there are entities known as Nexus beings who are the same across all realities. The Scarlet Witch is one such being. Now, Nexus beings are also monitored by the Time Variance Authority, and if that sounds familiar, you've probably picked it up from the Loki trailer, another Disney Plus series coming later this year. Does this mean Scarlet Witch is going to be in Loki? Probably not, but it's really nice that Marvel adds all these little details in to make everything just feel that wee bit more connected. This could also lend more weight to Elizabeth Olsen being in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If there's multiple Wandas out there, Wanda might want to visit other versions of herself to power up in some way. I don't know how it would work, but we're also 7 episodes into this show and still have no idea what's going on, so I don't feel too bad about it. Right, before we get to the big reveal, I just want to take a second to talk about Raid. Shadowlit, nah, I'm just kidding. I want to talk about how fucking amazing the cast is on this show. From Paul Bettany's Vision just being completely unfazed at the fact that he's died twice already and he's getting fed up with the TV crew, to Elizabeth Olsen doing what might be the greatest Julie Bowen impression of all time. She is just so freaking good. She's absolutely incredible in this show. But the real standout in this episode, Catherine Hahn as Agnes, or should I say, Agatha Harkness. After being a bit slower this week, WandaVision puts its foot on the gas to close out the episode with the big reveal that we've all been waiting for. It was Agatha all along. Confirming the speculations of many, we finally find out that Agatha has been up to far more than she was initially letting on. I called it way back in episode 1 and it feels so nice to get one right. But holy hell, what a good theme song she gave us. So much sass as well, right down the lens. She had us all hoodwinked from the start, and she even killed the dog, the bitch. Now we know that Agatha does have powers of her own, and they look like they work kinda similar to Wanda's with the glowing wiggly woos and whatnot, but it almost looked at the end there like Agatha was taking control of Wanda, or maybe she was just getting into her head to show her this fancy new title sequence that she's made, but it could have been that this was her manipulating Wanda, and it's going to be very messy in the next couple of episodes with Wanda fully being on the side of the bad guys, or she's had her in control all this time and this was just her activating it. Now with all these answers, unfortunately brings even more questions. The first big one being, where are the twins? Agnes was supposed to be looking after them. Wanda asked where they were and she said, oh, they're down in the basement, but that look she gave, she knew exactly what she was doing to send her down there for. So where are they? Have they met the same fate as Sparky? I certainly don't think so. This is still a Disney-owned show, so I'm thinking they're maybe not going to go that dark, but this has been adapted from a pretty dark comic, so you never know. Maybe she's just put them into another reality to keep them safe, or maybe she's just snapped them out of existence or something. Maybe not quite as dark as what Sparky endured. Still not over the dog. My next question, Pietro. Who is he? Because we've seen now that Agatha's been controlling him all this time, so is it just some random dude that Agatha said, you're her brother by the way, just go and pretend to be her brother and I'll take care of the rest? Or part of me thinks that this could be the big bad in a stunt casting skin suit, but an even larger part of me really wants an MCU Quicksilver, and this would be the way to do it. Pluck Evan Peters from the Fox reality, bring him to the MCU, put the memories of the other Quicksilver into this one, and just let him go. I really just want a Quicksilver, to be honest, and I'm going to stick with that one until it gets proven otherwise. What even is this place that's supposed to be Agatha's basement? Stone walls and pillars, hieroglyphs on the wall, cabinets with skulls and shit in the background. This doesn't look like any other part of the Hex. What's going on with that? Interestingly though, in the show's first mid-credit sequence, when Monica gets a peek in at the basement, she sees the tree roots in the same energy that Agatha used moments earlier before she gets caught by Pietro. I'm not sure what that means yet, I'm just pointing it out. And lastly, the last question I've got about this scene, what was that book in Agatha's basement? It was glowing red the same way that Wanda's powers do, and it looked quite similar to some of the books in the library in Doctor Strange. Maybe all magic books just look kinda the same, but is it the source of Agatha's power? Is it the source of the Hex's power? Well, I'm really excited to see where that goes, because it feels like we're going to get a whole bunch of Agnes in the next episode. It was a slow episode with a big finish. What did you think of it? What did you think of the big reveal? Did you like that it was Agatha Harkness all along? Did you not like it? Could you care less? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.